Hi, everyone. My name is Merritt. We're here at PDX Code Guild. And one of my favorite things about web development, all the way back to years and years ago when I was learning web development, was APIs. I think APIs are super cool. I like getting information from APIs. I like building APIs. And there's a particular piece of software for that called Django Rest Framework that I really like. I think it's a really great way to make APIs, and I think it makes it really easy. It makes it really easy to go ahead and get an API spun up, and also to make an API if just from scratch. Also to make an API out of an existing Django application, and that's what we're going to do tonight. We are going to, I'm going to talk just a little bit about DRF and APIs. And then I've got two examples I want to go over. One is I want to show off just how quick it is to start with literally nothing with an empty repository. And from there to go ahead and create a full-fledged web API. And I want to show how easy it is to take an existing Django project and to modify an existing Django project to add an API to it. We're not really going to go over the front end side of how to consume an API or how to take maybe your Vue or React front end and link it to the API. Because we only have an hour, and like I said, this is talking about APIs is something I love to do, and I really hope I can fit this all in an hour. So all that other stuff about kind of how to use an API and pull from an API is definitely going to be outside the scope of what we're talking about today. But hopefully you'll kind of get a sense for Django Rest Framework and how you can use it in your own projects. So let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. And the first thing I want to go over really, really quickly is the difference between an API and a between just a website. So what an API is API stands for Application Programming Interface. And what that's going to do is allow us to access a website and interact with a website instead of by typing things in to different pieces. We'll be able to send code to and from websites and communicate that way. So again, an API is how we can, as a computer, how we can interface with something instead of going in, typing things in, looking at a screen. It basically allows us to access things and interface with websites, not by using a website, but through code. For instance, this is TriMet's TriMet is the transit system here in Portland, and this is their new beta web app, which is actually really cool. I built something a couple years ago that's kind of like this, but not nearly as good. So you can see it's showing us all of all the buses and trains and everything. So like this is an Orange Line train. It's showing us all the locations, where they're all going, everything like that. So this is a website, right? We can look at it, we can interact with the data ourselves, but a computer can't read this. If we wanted to maybe save this information, or maybe we wanted to present it in our own way, or maybe wanted to say, hey, I want a way to get just the 4 buses or the 15 buses or something. Then a web API can come in handy. So this website is pulling off of the same data that's also being served off of this web API. You can see that here there's a list of 562 vehicles that are currently in Portland. And we're not going to go through all of them, but you can see that for each one, we get different things. This is a blue line to Gresham. It's a train. Here's the last stop and its next stop, its latitude and longitude, and so on and so on. We can use that information for whatever we needed to. Basically, websites are for humans, APIs are for computers. So let's look at how to build our own. We'll just kind of leave that And I think, do I have? Yeah, I have a VS Code window all up here with a blank repository. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and we are going to create this from scratch. So for those of you who've used Django before, this should be a review. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to blast through this all pretty quickly. I am going to install Django in a virtual environment. I'm going to go into that virtual environment. While I'm in here, I'm also going to pipenv install Django Rest Framework because we'll need that as well. All right, so we got everything we need in my virtual environment here. Let's go ahead and create a project. So Django-admin, start project. And I'm going to name this project to do project. Whoops, I didn't quite want to do that. I wanted to put a dot after that so it does it in the current folder. That's easy to fix though. I'm just going to take these and move them to the root folder. Why is it complaining at me?
I think your project folder is the same name as your app folder.
Yeah, or no, it's because I forgot the dot in the project name, and it doesn't like that I'm trying to move it to the same thing. I'm just going to delete it and run that again. That did it in a separate folder. I don't want that. I'm going to hit up so that I can run the same thing over again, and I'm going to put that dot so that it does it in the same folder. And there we go. That's what I was looking for. So now that we've got that that project, I need to go ahead and create a I need to go ahead and create an app. So let's do Python manage.py start app. Whoops, start app, and I'm going to call this app to do. And now we have a to do app. I'm going to go into my settings.py and I'm going to add two things. So I've got this django.contrib.static files and all of these other django.contribs. These are the built-in apps. I'm going to leave a space just so that it's obvious. And I'm going to say rest underscore framework to install Django Rest Framework. And now I'm going to install my own app, which was just called to do. So everything's there, everything's recognized. Now, let's go ahead and I need a model. Before I go ahead and migrate it, create the database and everything, I need a model. Let's go into here and let's go into models. I'm going to create a new Django model and I'm going to call it to do. It's going to inherit from models.model. And let's give this, we're going to keep it simple for now. I'm going to give this model a, let's say that each to do has a title. That's going to be a character field. Oh, I know why it isn't picking those out. Where is, here we go, DRF to do.
Hey, Merritt, would it be possible for you to full screen your window there?
Yeah.
It's just a little bit difficult to read the text.
I can also make it a little bit bigger here.
That looks pretty good. That's much more readable. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to make a character field and give it a max length of 200. Again, I'm not going to spend much time with the models. That part's not important. I'm just making it to do. Let's give it a, let's give it a created, and that'll be a models dot datetime field, auto. And we'll set it to automatically just set that to the time that it's created. And let's say that completed equals models dot, whoops, Boolean field. And I'm going to say null, or actually, no, I'm not going to say null equals true, blank equals true. I'm going to give it a default value of false. So by default, when you create something, it's not completed. And of course, we'll give it a dunder string method so that it prints out all nice. All right, so let's go ahead and add everything to our database so that we're all good to go. I'm going to make migrations. And I'm going to migrate. And now that I've made my migrations, now that I have migrated, I'm going to create a super user. I don't know if we're actually going to use the super user, but it's good to have. We'll just call it admin. Password will be test 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're good to go. So now I can run Python manage.py run server. And let's go back into Chrome and pull up our app. And we don't see anything because we haven't gone ahead and hooked up any URLs for anything yet. So we'll get there. But everything loads fine. I don't see any errors. That means I didn't make any typos. We're all good to go. So now that we have that, now that we have a model, now that we have a Django app, let's build an API that can go ahead and interface with it. So just like in normal Django, you have views, you have models, and you have templates. In here, we're still going to be working with models. We're going to be working with API views. In particular, I'm going to use it with an API with a view set. And instead of templates that say how to format and build both just web pages and forms to take in information in and out from a human, we're going to build a serializer. We're going to build a serializer that's going to say how to go ahead and do that, how to take information in and out for a computer. Basically, how to, what the serializer is going to do is output, instead of HTML, it's going to output JSON that we can then go ahead and use. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and get everything in place. First thing I'm going to do is build a serializer. So I need a new file, serializers.py. And in here, I need to import from rest_framework. I need to import serializers. And from .models, I want to go ahead and import my to-do model. Whoops. There we go, my to-do model. So that's why it's messed up, because I typed form instead of from again. So now that we have that imported, let's go ahead and create our serializer. Django makes it very easy to build a serializer using a syntax that's much the same as the way that class-based forms in Django work. So I'm going to say class, and I'm going to say to do serializer. And that's going to inherit from serializers dot model serializer. This is where the magic happens. This is an API's version of a template. This tells it how to take stuff from the database and turn it into JSON. So just like in a model form, I give it a class meta. So the remember, classes are blueprints. A class meta is a blueprint for a blueprint. I'm going to go ahead and in here, I'm going to give it the model that I want to serialize. So that's the to-do. And I'm going to give it a list of fields that I want it to be there. So let's go back to models, and we've got 3 fields: title, created, and completed. So I'm going to put those in. Title, created, and completed. And that's it. That is enough for both ends. That will, when we send JSON in, it'll be able to see these fields. It'll be able to validate them, make sure everything's good to go, and then save things to the database. And the other way around, when we ask for information from here, Django Rest Framework will use this to build the JSON that it's going to send, that once it gets the objects from the database, build the JSON that it's going to send to us to whatever we want to do on the front end. So here is our serializer. We are a third done. Not counting the Django setup part. With building the API, once we got the model done, we're a third done here. Serializers, and the next thing we need to do is views. So I'm going to go into views here. And I need to go ahead and import a couple of things as usual. So from rest _ framework, I'm going to import view sets and permissions. And then from my own stuff from, whoops, I'm really not doing well with these imports today. So from .models, I want to go ahead and import to do again. And then from .serializers, I want to go ahead and import my to-do serializer, because our view is going to use both of those. And now Django Rest Framework has a lot of different ways that we can build views, things that range from writing just one-off API views to different generic API views that come with built-in functionality, for instance, for reading, for listing, for deleting, for updating and deleting, for any combination of those. But if you want to just do all 5, if you want to be able to list, create, read, update, and delete, the 5 major operations that almost any web app is built on, Django Rest Framework makes it very easy with something called a ModelViewSet. That'll build out all 5 operations on all 2 endpoints that we need to go ahead and have a complete API for that given model. It makes it super easy. So I'm going to say class to do view set, and that's going to inherit from viewsets.modelViewSet. And what I need to do is I just need to give it a couple of things. I need to give it the model or query set that I want to pull from. So the query set that I want to pull from is going to be to do dot objects dot, I could do dot all, but I'm actually going to do dot order by and order them by just negatively by the date that they were created. So I'm going to give it a field and I'm going to make it descending, and I called it created. The next thing we need to do is give it the serializer to use. So basically, I'm giving it two things. I'm giving it the data that I want to, in the database that I want to interact with the model. And then I'm going to give it the serializer that it's going to use as that conduit, as that intermediary between the data and the JSON that comes in and out. So I'm going to say serializer class equals, and I'm going to say that to-do serializer that we already wrote. So now that I've got that, there's an option. That's all we need. But I'm going to put one more thing in. I'm going to say permission classes equals, and I can go ahead and there are some built-in permissions that are already built in. For instance, without even building any custom permissions, we could make it so, for instance, you have to be authenticated, or else the API is only read-only. You have to be logged in order to post anything. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm just going to say allow any. Anybody can send and receive anything for now. Again, that's optional. We don't even need that to get an API up and running, but chances are you probably want some sort of permission classes later down the road. You probably are going to want permission eventually. So believe it or not, we are almost done. There's just one more thing we need to do. I'm going to go into my URLs. And for those of you who have been working with Django, yes, in more of a, in the real world, I would link this and include to-do.urls. But again, this is just an example of how absolutely quick you can just throw up a web API. So I'm just going to do it in my project URLs here. I am going to go ahead and also import include here. And I've got the admin. I'm going to leave that. It's not hurting anything. But what I want to do is I want to go ahead and from REST framework, I want to import something called a router. Basically, Django Rest Framework has the ability with those view sets, it'll automatically even build the views for you. So I'm going to go ahead and use that router or routers. And I want to make sure that I go ahead and import the views from, that is going to be from to-do, to-do, import views. All right, so I think that's everything we need. Let's go ahead and build the router. So I'm going to say router equals routers dot default router. So I'm going to create an instance of a router. And then all I need to do is say router.register and give it two things. I need to give it the name of what I want this group to be called. This is also what it's going to use for the URL. So it'll be localhost :8000 / in this case, I'm just going to say to-dos. Whoops, to-dos. And then we need to point it to the view set. So I'm going to say views dot, and I'm going to say to-do view set. So now all we need to do is let's add a couple of URLs here. Let's go ahead and say path. And I'm going to say include router.urls. That'll go ahead and automatically make those all those URLs for us. And I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to say, just so that we get the little login and logout buttons right there within the Browsable API, I'm going to say API-auth/, and then I'm going to here, I'm going to go ahead and include REST. This should be a string. REST _ framework.urls. And that should be it. Let's see what we got. So my site is already up and running. I can go back to Django here, and when I reload it, here is the basic root view for the default router. One of the nice things about Django is, even though it was ridiculously quick there to go ahead and create an API, Django Rest Framework allows you to just spend literally as much time as you want customizing everything. But because we just put something together super quick, we're still dealing with a lot of the defaults. So we've got different default messages like this. But if we just do a message to here, we get this browsable API. This is one of the super cool things that Django Rest Framework does. It gives us a web interface that we can use to navigate our API. If I go ahead and click there, here is our to-do list API. So we can see that right now there's no APIs, there's no objects, there's no to-dos in there. So let's practice working with those to-dos. So it gives us a little HTML form if we want to type it in as a form. But what I think is best is raw data, because we can experiment with different things. For instance, let's see what happens if we just send, let's pretend this is just some other app. What happens if we just send our API, try to post to it with just an empty object? We get an error that says title, this field is required. It was a bad request. So, okay, let's go ahead and do a real request. So title, let's say finish API. Completed is false. Let's go ahead and post that. And it created it. If we go back to our to-do list, now you can see here is, here's our API with all of the different, the title, the created date, and the fact that it hasn't been completed yet. We can create another one. We could say grocery shopping. We can say make more lists. And now we have 3. The serializer is telling it exactly what should be here. If I go into my serializer, and for example, if I take out created in the list of fields, you'll see that now it doesn't tell us when things were created anymore. So let's go ahead and add that back in so that it says created again, because we do want to see the created date. So we can do a get request to to-dos and get the to-dos. We can do a post request to to-dos with the data that we want and go ahead and create a to-do. And we can view each individual to-do. For this, I'm going to add a field that wasn't in my models. By default in Django, everything has a primary key that is the ID field. So I'm going to create a new field called ID, and I'm going to put it right at the beginning. Now we can see the IDs for everything. So I'm going to say, well, the API is finished. So let's go to to-do/1.
Hey, Merritt, could you make your browser window a little bit bigger to be a little more readable?
Yeah, let me go ahead and blow that up. So here is number 1. We're just viewing to-do number 1. And now we can go ahead and if we want, we can edit it. So let's say that actually completed is true. And we can go ahead and change that. Now, if we go back to the to-do list, we can see that these are false, but finish API is true. And maybe I've decided I don't actually need to make more lists. I can go into to-dos/3, /3, and I can send a delete request. and it says it went ahead and deleted it. It worked, and now there's just no content. If I go back to the to-do list, then that's that. So the Browsable API here is a really nice way that we can just go ahead and see what we're doing and test things out. As you saw, if you make a mistake, you'll get a message. It'll tell you exactly what the requests and responses are for all your API stuff. This means that it's very easy to get your head around what's going on and see everything that's going on. Now, when you access we're getting this browsable API because we're hitting all these URLs from a web browser. If we weren't doing it from a web browser, then we wouldn't get the browsable API. We can see what we would normally get by doing the little drop down here and saying just the JSON. This is what you would get if you did an AJAX request on the front end, or maybe you do a curl on the command line. You would get something like this. And we can do all the same things. Again, I'm not going to go over, we're already strapped enough for time. I don't have enough time to go into actually linking it up to a front end and making those requests and everything. But we can go ahead and make all those requests just like normal. But Django Rest Framework just gives us a nice little way to go ahead and browse and see what we're doing without having to go ahead and I'm sure all of you, when you started, were just kind of trial and erroring with some random API. You were just trying some requests out and seeing what the responses were, looking at the errors. This makes it a little easier to wrap your head around exactly what's going on. Oh yeah, I got a question. Do you need a JSON add-in in the browser? I do have an add-on called JSON Formatter that formats JSON all nice like this in the browser. If you don't have an add-on, then it just looks like this. It's just a little less helpful. I like how it kind of parses everything out for me like that. So before we move on to the next thing, just to recap, that is the basics of Django Rest Framework. Super useful and super quick. We can spend a lot of time customizing everything and adding different options, different filters and searching. We can mess with permissions, cores, paginations, different forms of token-based authentication, things like that. But at its core, Django Rest Framework allows us to very, very, very quickly build an API without losing any of the power. Django Rest Framework is very easy to learn and very difficult to master. It's very, very easy to just get something spun up, to just get a CRUD API for a Django model spun up. You saw that we did it here we went literally from 0 to API, from literally no code to an API in about 20 minutes, with me actually explaining everything along the way. And literally, this was all of the code that we actually had to write. We had to write a router. We had to write this one class here for a view set. And I need the little zoom bar to get out of the way. Let's just move it over here. I had to do one class here for the serializer. And that is all that it takes. So I see another question I'm going to answer real quick before I can go into my second example. And that is, what else does the REST framework give you besides a browsable API? First thing is, it gives you an API just in general. It makes it very quick to build that API instead of manually setting up all your endpoints, manually implementing everything. But you also, and you get that browsable API, which is a huge plus. You also get a ridiculous amount of things you can customize. As you can see, there's all kinds of stuff. If you want to add different filtering, so you can filter and add query parameters in, you can do that. If you want to add just a generic searcher, you can do that. If you want to change the ordering for your API, you can do that. If you want to make it so that maybe instead of just CRUD, generic CRUD, if you want to customize the permissions, you can do that. If you want to make it so some things are read only and some things are read and write, you can do that. If you want something to work with different fields, you can do that. If you want it to allow you to maybe write to some models, but just delete others, if that's something you want, you can do that. Django makes it very easy to get an API with a browsable interface and everything up and running. But after you've got that up and running, it gives you an almost limitless amount of customization to go ahead and keep going and keep customizing things. So the next thing I want to do is, so that was fun. We went from literally just from 0 to 60. I want to show off another API. I want to, and both of these examples that I'm doing are committed to GitHub. So Pete, I'll give you the links so you can just put those in the YouTube description. So let's go ahead and open. Okay, good. I did quit the server. Let's go back to projects and let's, oh, I already had it open, ready and waiting. So this is another project that I put together. This is, let's do Python. Okay, good. We are in the virtual environment, manage.py, run server. I know we are running a little short on time. Oh, I misspelled it as usual. Manage. So I know we're running a little low on time, so I'm going to try to see if we can fit this in. We might, the Q&A part might have to stretch past 6. But let's look at what I have here. So this does not have an API yet. This is just a Django application. It's just a notepad application. It lets us see a list of all the notes. It lets us look at any given note. It lets us look at a certain user's notes or a certain other user's notes. And if we go ahead and log in, passwords 1234, test 1234 as usual. If we do that, then we can actually, we can create new notes. We can look at a given note and we can edit it or delete it. This one's even got generic Django permissions set up so that you can only edit your own notes, things like that. But there's no API. Maybe I want to keep this, but maybe I want to make a phone app version that works off of the same database. Or maybe I want to make a desktop version. So this website is great for just a website. I mean, I don't know if it's a great website, but it's functional. It does the job. But if I want to be able to save and work with this database from some other system, or maybe I want to let anyone on the internet see these to-dos or manipulate them, then we're going to need an API. So let's go ahead and build that. Let's go ahead and put that into practice. So I have this application here. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new application. I need a new app. It's usually considered best practice. You'll see different things on the internet. I tend to consider it best practice. And the way I usually do it is to put the API in its own app. That way you can see everything that's going on and you can see that it's all separate. So I'm going to go ahead and do Python manage, and I spelled manage right this time, manage.py start app, and I'm going to name the app API. So now I've got this API app. I'm going to go to my settings.py, and I need to install two things. I need to install my API app, and I also need to, I'm going to go ahead and kind of space this out like I did earlier. I need a to import a REST framework to make sure that I am REST framework to make sure that I have that installed as well. So what I am going to do is, before I go ahead and run that, it's going to complain that REST framework doesn't exist. I need to go ahead and add it to my virtual environment. All right, boom, that's done. So now that that is done and good and out of the way, I can go ahead and save this. Everything's good to go. And let's go ahead and build out everything we're going to need in our API. So everything here is going to look a lot like, it's going to largely be a repeat from what we did with our to-do example. It's going to pretty much look the same. I'm going to do it a slightly different way. I'm actually going to use the individual generic API views instead of the API view set, just to show off some of the differences and everything. So again, we need some serializers. And this application has two models. We're using two models here. I've got the users here, and I've also got the notes themselves. Each note, it has a foreign key. It has a many-to-one connection to each individual user. If we go into Notes app, it is the through the author field. So let's go into here and create us a serializer. So from REST_framework, import serializers from notes_app dot models. Let's import note, and let's also say from Django.contrib.auth.models, let's import the user so we can use that as well. So next thing we need to go is build those serializers out. So just like before, I'm going to say class, and I'm going to create two. I'm going to create a note serializer. Inherits from model serializer. And this is going to have a class meta, again, a blueprint for how to build this blueprint. And the model is going to be note. And the fields that we're going to use are, let me actually go back. I need to open up my models again to see what those are. So we've got all of these. Let's go ahead and put in ID. Let's put in title. Let's put in author. Let's put in created. Whoops, that should be in quotes. Let's put updated. And the body of the quote. All right, so I'm going to save that. And because these things are so similar, to make my serializer for the users, I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste. So I need to change this. Instead of note serializer, this needs to say user serializer. The model is going to be the user, and the fields is going to be a little different. I'll keep the ID in, but let's go ahead and just put in username and email. Let's stick just with those. For now. I'll show you something in a minute. So we've got those. Now, that's our serializers. Again, the next thing we need is the views. So I'm going to go into views, and let's go ahead and create the views that we're going to need. So from rest_framework, import. This time, instead of importing the view sets, I'm going to import generics. And I'm also going to import the permissions, but we're probably not going to have time to actually get to them. I'm also going to, from django.contrib.auth.models, import that user model so we can work with it. And then for my own app, let's say from notes app dot models, import our other model, our note model. From serializers, let's import post serializer. Oops, not post serializer, it's note serializer. And let's also import our user serializer. We're not, again, I don't think we're going to have enough time to mess with the permissions here. So let's go ahead and this time, instead of using the view sets, let's go ahead and build things the slightly more old-fashioned way. So I am going to go ahead and say class, and I'm going to put two. One for I'm going to put two classes in here because I'm going to have two generic views. Basically, instead of a set of all of them, I'm going to have one for the listing and creating all the things that are at /notes, and then one for retrieving, updating, and destroying all the things that have a PK involved, all the things where we need to know which one we're retrieving, which one we're updating, which one we're destroying. So those are going to be two separate views because we're not doing it as a view set. So I'm going to say class note list, and that's going to inherit from generics.list create view. One of the nice parts about Django Rest Framework is it makes it very easy to customize these. So this is the list create API view. If I don't want to allow people to create things, if I want it to just list things, I can just do a list API view. If I want them to be able to create it, but not see them, I can do a create API view. But I'm going to do a list create API view. I want to allow them to just do whatever. Again, I'm going to set the query set. This time I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm just going to say note.objects.all. And let's set the serializer class up. Our serializer class is going to be the note serializer. All right, let's go ahead and build ourselves the note detail view that's going to be able to retrieve, update, and destroy. That one is going to look almost exactly the same. That's going to be note detail. And instead of a list create view, it's going to be a retrieve, update, destroy view. Again, Django Rest Framework makes it easy to mix and match these. If you want it to be a retrieve and an update, but nobody can delete anything from your API, then just make it a retrieve update view. If you want them to just be able to retrieve it, do a retrieve view. Just destroy, do a destroy API view. Also notice that these are exactly the same. All the details for these are exactly the same. That's why view sets exist. View sets let you just have to make it so you just type this in once. But again, Django Rest Framework makes it very easy to get started, but it allows a ridiculous amount of control over everything. So even though the view set will let us do everything and we don't have to repeat ourselves, here we can mess with things and we can customize. Whereas our view set it did all five. It listed, it created, it retrieved, it updated, it destroyed, and we didn't really have any say over the matter. Here, we can customize which ones we want. We can make some of them act differently if we want to. Again, it's just a matter of control. Django Rest Framework makes it very, very easy to build something, get something started, and then it gives you the customization and flexibility to go wherever you want past that. So let's go ahead and, oh, do I have a typo? Probably. Destroy. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for users. Again, there's a lot of boilerplate code, though if you've made an API from scratch, you know this is a lot less boilerplate code. Here, it's just going to be user list and user detail. And instead of note.objects, it's going to be user.objects.all and user.objects.all. And we're going to get it from the user serializer. Again, there's a lot of customization we can start adding to our views. We can start adding things like searching, filters, permissions, pagination, different things like that to fill it out. But at its base, these API views at their base are just, hey, what in the database do you want me to connect to? And what serializer do you want me to use to determine what the JSON should look like coming in and out? So here are our views. Again, a little more control this way, but we had to type in 4 classes instead of just 2 if we had view sets. And one last thing, just like in if we're going to make a a normal front end with Django, just the vanilla way, we would need views, templates, and URLs. Here we've got our generic views, we've got our serializers instead of templates, and we need those URLs. So I'm going to create a new file here called urls.py. And let's go ahead and get those implemented. So from Django.urls import path, it's going to use the same paths. And we're actually, because we're not using the router, we don't actually need to import anything else. I just need to say from.views import, and I need to go ahead and import all those. So note list, note detail, user list, and user detail. And let's go ahead and hook up all those different URL patterns. So URL patterns equals, and let's go ahead and enter in those 4 paths that we need. So again, because it's not the router, it's not going to do the like in a view set, it's not going to create the paths for us. We're just going to create them manually, just like any other Django path. So I'm going to say notes/int pk, and that is going to pull from note detail dot as view. Whoops, view. So we have that, and then we just need to fill out the other 3 views for our, or the other 3 URLs, sorry, for our other 3 views. So this path is going to be notes slash just notes slash, and this is going to be note list dot as view. And then again, I'm just going to copy and paste because I'm lazy. Users, users, user, and user. For any of you that are used to putting, they're used to naming your URL patterns, you don't have to worry about that here because you're not going to be reversing anything ever. Because you're not going to be using the built-in Django templates or any of that reversing stuff or anything. So here we've got our URL patterns, and I know it's 6 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get this up and running and see what we've got. And then I've actually got one more cool thing that if you have time to stick around, I'll show off super quickly, and then I'll ask any questions, and then we'll be done. If you do have to leave, if it is 6 and you do have to leave right now, thanks for coming out. But if you can stay another 10, 15 minutes, there are a couple more things that are pretty cool that I want to go ahead and show off. So here we've got our URLs built in. Now we just need to go into our global, oops, not settings, our global URLs and make sure that we're going ahead and using those. So I am going to go into my project URLs here. And all that I need to go ahead and do is I've got all of this. I want to go ahead and let's add another line and say path. I want to pull in API/v1/. It is considered best practice to name your APIs in the path API/v1, API/v2, and so on. Even if you don't know if there'll ever be a v2, it makes it super easy to just add a v2 later. If you don't like the way the API looks, you can just go ahead and you can leave the existing one as a backward compatibility thing and just go ahead and create a brand new one if you want, and just name it v2. Just create a new Django app and go for it again. But this is our first one, so let's include API.urls. And finally, so that we get, or I guess I closed it, but that little link in the upper right-hand corner so we can log in and log out and everything directly from the Browsable API. I'm going to put in one more path. This is going to be API-off. And this is going to include the built-in REST_framework URLs here. And let's make sure that we don't forget the comma afterwards, because that will bring everything to a screeching halt. But should be good. Let's save everything. And those of you who have taken classes with me know that I always forget to save. But now that we have everything saved, let's go ahead and run the server again. So everything still works just the same as before. We can still use any of the built-in forms, but we've just added on to it. Right next to our, oh, whoops, or no, it is API, or oh, we got to go ahead and type in which one we want. So let's say notes. But parallel to our existing website, we also have an API interface for it. So here we can see, here are all of my, different to-dos. And just like before, we can go ahead and we can get them. We can view a specific one. We can look at the third note. We can look at the users. We can look at a specific user. So if, again, if that's all the time that you have tonight, thanks for coming out. It's great to see everybody show up. Again, I love talking about Django Rest Framework. But if you do have just a couple of extra minutes here, I want to show off something really cool that you can do, one of those customization type things that you can do to make your APIs a little bit more complex and a little cooler. So if we look at our API here, you can see that we have the list of users, and let me go ahead and open up the list of notes. And they're not really related to each other. We can't really see, they can't see each other. They don't really have any reference to each other. They actually do just from this side. you can see that author is 2. So that means that this grocery list note belongs to user number 2. So we can know by cross-referencing with the user list that I'm user number 2. This is my grocery list. But that required doing an extra API call and thinking about it and everything. A lot of times you want to be able to do one API call that brings up multiple things. So let's make it so instead of just showing this, this number, it goes ahead and shows the different information. We can go ahead and do that pretty easily, actually. So if I go ahead and go back to VS Code, and we can close some of this out now, everything we need to do now is all inside the serializers. We're not going to need any of the other stuff. Now that we have our API working, a lot of the customization we're going to do is really just all within the serializers here. So what I am going to go ahead and do is where it says author here, right now it's doing just the default. It's using the default author field. So our model serializer looks at our model and it looks at author and it sees, oh, hey, author is another model. It's a foreign key. So by default, what it's going to do is it's going to give us the PK. This is great. It's super easy to read and write. For instance, if we go into notes slash, what was that? Notes /1. The author is super easy to do. I can say author 1 and put in a request. And now it's admin's grocery list instead. I can go ahead and change this to 2 from my front end or from curl or whatever, and instantly change it back. PKs are super easy to deal with, but oftentimes you want to be able to read things. You want to be able to read things, and you want to be able to see everything. We don't want to have to think about, okay, which is author 2, or have it saved in another object maybe we save it to a different object in JavaScript, and then we go, and then we have to kind of cross-reference everything. So one of the coolest kind of more intermediate level things that personally I think is the ability to make nested serializers. So right now, by default, when we reference author, by default, it's just going to look for that PK. But we can say, I don't want author just to be the PK. Let's do something else instead. What I want to do is I'm actually going to have to move this up to make it work, because you cannot reference something until after you've defined it. I want to go ahead and say that the author, instead of just using the PK, go ahead and fill out that author. Don't just give us the number of the author, fill out the author. So what I am going to do is I am going to go ahead and say user serializer. So for the author, use my other serializer and put that serializer inside this one. So for this one, there isn't anything I need to put in, but I am going to put one thing in. With a nested serializer like this, they're not read-only by default, but the write part is unimplemented. So if I try to write to it, I'll get an error that says, hey, you haven't implemented that. But read-only is good. So again, read-only, adding the write takes a while. You actually have to do a bunch more code, and that's way behind, past the scope of what we're doing just today. But I'm going to go ahead here and say read-only equals true, just so we kind of bypass that entirely. And now, if I reload this, notice that author is now expanded. It can go through that foreign key, take a look at the author, and instead of just giving us the PK, the ID of that author, it can actually fill it out. Now, this is all well and good, but what if we want to use our user serializer? What if we want to do it the other way? So let's look at our user list. I would like to be able to see a list of all the posts. So let's add to our user serializer let's add notes as a field. And you'll notice now it gives us an array of those PKs because again, it's a many to one. We're on the one side, so it shows us instead of just a PK, it shows us an array of PKs. So I want to go ahead and do the same. Again, this is great for assigning different notes to different people. It makes it really easy to read to write things, but it's not necessarily the easiest always for reading. It would be easier if I had the ability to make notes be a blown up version of the notes. So now I can say notes equals, and I want to say notes serializer, but why can't I say notes serializer? It's because it is defined down here, but I'm trying to reference it down here. And think about it. Even if I could reference either one, it would create some kind of crazy circular thing where our note would have the author would be filled out with the note would be filled out with the author, and it would just go on forever. Even if we could somehow reference this before assignment, it wouldn't make any sense and it wouldn't work. So actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new serializer. I'm going to create a special serializer just for nesting inside other serializers. I'm actually going to create one of each because each one is going to be nested inside the other one. Exactly, like two mirrors just pointing at each other, with just everything being included recursively forever. So I'm going to create two more of these, and I am going to call these nested note serializer and nested user serializer. Now I don't need to change my views at all. I don't need to import these anywhere else because these are only being used inside these other serializers. The fact that it's called nested user serializer and nested note serializer doesn't mean anything to Django Rest Framework. They're just serializers. I called them nested note serializer and nested user serializer just to make it immediately obvious what they do. So when I am when I've got the nested note serializer, when I am inside the user, and let's change this to be nested note serializer and nested. So now when I'm using the nested one, when I am accessing the user, I don't need to see the notes. I don't need to see the notes that belong to the user because it's this note. That would also create some circular logic, and it would just be a waste of space. It only creates a little bit of circular logic, and it's not a true circle because it's not going to go on forever. It's not going to be a problem, but it's just a waste of space. What we have here works perfectly well. I'm going to take these out so that it doesn't break it. But if I go ahead and look at my, did I save that? Of course not. If I look at my note serializer or my note list, you can see that inside author, it tells the notes for each one. It's just a waste of space because we can see right here that, well, duh, it's going to be note number one because this is note number one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take, in my nested user serializer, I'm just going to take notes out entirely. So there we go. Now we're just doing returning this information. But if we look at our user list, we're actually using a different serializer in which we get more information. One thing that I do need to do is in my nested note serializer, this note serializer is serializing multiple things. It's on the many side. It's going to create a list. So we're going to get an error unless we say many equals true, just to tell it that we're serializing many things. So it should create a list and not just one thing. But again, we can go ahead and do this. And here's our nested serializer using what we had before. So this will look at this will look at a given user. So here's user with an ID of 2, and both of these say they have an author of 2. Well, of course they have an author of 2. We know that because I have an ID of 2, and those are my things. We know that it's going to be an author of 2. There's nothing wrong with keeping that in. It's just a waste of data. So let's go in here and go to our nested note serializer and take out the author, because in that circumstance, we already do know what the author is going to be. And there we go. So now when we look up a given user, we can see the notes that belong to it, but it doesn't do anything recursively. It doesn't waste any space. It doesn't keep going. It knows that if a note is nested within a user, it doesn't need to say who the author is. But if we're viewing the note directly, then we do want to say the author. And if we're viewing the author nested, we don't want to post the notes list. If we are looking at it directly, user directly, we do want to post the notes list. So this gives us something nice. Now there's a million places we can go from here. We could, again, we didn't get into permissions. We didn't add any filtering or searching. You can just look up a list of everything, figure out the one you want, and then look at it in particular, but you can't do any filtering. There's no pagination. So if you have 1,000 notes in your database, you're going to get a JSON back with 1,000 notes at once. There's no token-based authentication to use with the front end. We haven't set up CORS or CSRF so that other servers can, other websites, other front ends can make AJAX calls. But again, that's just more customization we can do. The one other thing I want to do is one thing that is really, really low-hanging fruit that we probably should change is that right now, if I go to my users, I have the ability to create a user right from here. This isn't going to work for a number of reasons. One, our serializer doesn't have password in it. Number two, it's not being passed through the process to salt and hash passwords and create new users. So we're going to get, the way it is, we're going to get garbage data. Even if we added something like password, it's not going to work correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the views, and the last thing I'm going to do is my note list and note detail. You can do anything too. You can list everything, create everything, retrieve, update, and destroy everything. But for the user, I'm going to say you can only list things. And well, let's make it so let's not make it. Let's just make it easy so that you can only retrieve things. And you'll notice that the Browsable API will automatically update to match. When I reload the page, that form goes away. If I look at users/1, whoops. If I look at users/1, there we go. We don't get that option. The delete button's gone, and so is the form to put or patch it. And again, plenty more we can do, but that's an API. That is everything for today. Hopefully you kind of got a taste. I know we went through a lot and we went through it pretty quickly, but hopefully you had a chance here to get a taste of how Django Rest Framework works. Get a sense for how it's laid out, and get a sense for both how you can start literally from zero and build a web API very, very quickly, and how you can also leverage what you already have in Django and add APIs onto existing projects. Django Rest Framework tries very hard to use the same, just different class structures and kind of feel and interface as Django itself, which makes it very easy if you know Django to go ahead and adapt what you have to Django Rest Framework. And even though you can very quickly put something up, the limits for what you can do with it, what you can customize for it, the different features you can add to it are almost endless.